Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video. Today we are here to bring you the fights to make after UFC London, Movsar Evloev versus Lerone Murphy. I'm going to be talking about mostly the winners. Some of the losers will also be mentioned, but overall I think these are good fights to make following the results of all of these fights. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. So Movsar Evloev beat Lerone Murphy last night to earn himself a title shot. Alright, this should be the fight to make, but I'm gonna be real with y'all. If the UFC decides to do UFC things where they just give someone like Silva the next title shot over Evloev, I'm not gonna lose sleep over that. Alright, Movsar Evloev did not really convince us that he's going to beat Volk, let alone have an entertaining fight with him. Like, I think that Movsar Evloev, I don't know why he decided to kickbox with Lerone Murphy. You know, maybe the UFC just brought him to the backstage and was like, yo, kid, listen, kid. If you try to take down and ragdoll Lerone Murphy from the first round, we're not giving you a title shot, kid. All right? And that could be the case. All right? Which, in that case, I might feel bad for him. But, like, I don't know, man. It just felt like Movsar Evloev, his best moments were when he's wrestling. Like, honestly, the highlights of that fight was when he was easily able to dunk Lerone Murphy and just ragdoll him at will. That's when Movsar Evloev can be fun. But for some reason, he just chose to have a sparring kickboxing match with Lerone Murphy for the first two rounds. Honestly, I thought that Movsar Evloev should have got a draw in this fight. I really do. Just for that. But I guess this is the next fight to make because Movsar technically won. I don't think this is going to be the most exciting fight ever. I do think that Silva can be a more fun alternative. But for once, the UFC needs to respect meritocracy. I feel like we've been having too many of these matchups where these undeserving guys have been getting title shots over the deserving fighters. And even though I don't find Movsar Evloev to be entertaining whatsoever, he has beaten a lot of guys, technically, even though half of these could be considered robbery decisions. But either way, though, Movsar Evloev versus Alexander Volkanovski is the fight to make, and I guess I'll be rooting for Volkanovski when the time comes. I think Lerone Murphy should fight the winner between Aljamain Sterling and Youssef Zalal for a couple of reasons. One, they're going to be fighting next month, and the winner should be deserving a title elimination bout. Two, I think this is going to go 5 rounds, and considering Lerone Murphy, he blew out his hip, and he had a 5-round fight with Movsar Evloev, their schedules will probably line up. So, and also, Lerone Murphy, you got to give him a grappler. Like, he looked really defenseless against Movsar Evloev whenever Evloev actually shot for the takedowns. And it was kind of underwhelming from Lerone Murphy in the later rounds. So I think that Lerone Murphy should fight someone who is just going to wrestle with him from the get-go. Fair enough, I thought that Evloev was going to be the one to do that, but for some reason he didn't do that. But either way, though, Lerone Murphy versus the winner between Aljamain Sterling versus Youssef Zalal. I think this could be a cool fight to make sometime in the end of 2026, maybe the beginning of next year. But either way, though, Lerone Murphy, he's going to need to fight down. I don't think he needs to fight that far down in the rankings, but he is going to have to give one of these guys a chance to fight for the title if they beat Lerone Murphy right after. Moving on to the co-main event for Luke Riley. He's good. He is good, but we do need to slow roll him a little bit. I don't think that Luke Riley's going to be a ranked contender in the near future, but he's young, so there's positives to him. I think that Luke Riley should fight someone like Khan Offley, you know, maybe not as someone as awful as Bogdan Grad or like Michael Aswell Jr., although Michael Aswell Jr., to be fair, is tough. I think that he needs to fight someone who has some wins in the UFC, and that guy, in my opinion, should be Khan Offley. Now, Khan Offley, he just fought on the Australia card, like, what was it, 2 months ago, and he just won a bullshit robbery decision against Yi Jia. So, I think that we're going to have to give him someone that is on the come-up, someone who, like, if you beat him, then fine. Like, you're actually someone who's, like, UFC caliber. I still struggle to comprehend whether or not Khan Offley's UFC caliber, because he got his ass beat by Yizha. And fair enough, Yizha's not bad by any means, but it's like the only time Khan Offley's able to win fights is if he's fighting complete schmucks or if he's winning a robbery decision against Yizha. Like, this guy even lost to Muhammad Naimov not that long ago, so I'm not really convinced of Khan Offley's career so far. So let's give Khan Offley Luke Riley, and Luke Riley, if you can beat Khan Offley, then fair enough. You're actually a legitimate UFC fighter. But either way, though, Luke Riley versus Khan Offley, I think this is the fight to make so we can build up Luke Riley in the near future. Alright, guys, we got Michael Venom Page next, and you know what? Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy. Alright, I'm sorry, man. You're probably gonna get cut from the UFC after this. That fight with Sam Patterson was honestly one of the worst fights I've ever watched. And I don't think that's an exaggeration because I think a lot of people can agree with me when I say that. The problem with MVP, I understand that his style relies on people to come in to the void recklessly. But if you let MVP dictate the fight and they can't get takedowns, MVP barely does anything. He throws like 5 significant strikes per 3 minutes. And although you could say that, Sam Patterson should have done a better job cutting off the cage and all that. Like, let's be real here. This is every single one of MVP's fights. Like, the Shara Bullet fight was mid. The Jared Cannonier fight outside of the knockdown was pretty mid. It just feels like whenever MVP has the ability to control the fight, he's so underwhelming because he refuses to initiate offense on his own outside of a 1-2 once every like 3 minutes or so. So I don't want to see MVP fight anymore. I feel like a lot of people can agree with me on this unless your name is Kenny Okoye, but I just don't find MVP all that entertaining now because this is what I'm going to have to expect from MVP moving forward. This has happened at least 3 times now, and I've just lost all interest for watching a Michael Venom Page fight. So, unfortunately, MVP, you're probably going to have to learn some Chinese, and you're going to get cut from the roster right after this. Moving on to Sam Patterson, lost to Michael Venom Page. I understand that he didn't really have a plan to cut the cage off and try to initiate against MVP, but like, I'm gonna be real, I think that's just MVP because, you know, MVP's the one who typically fights like this. Whereas Sam Patterson, like, he has bangers. Against, like, lower level competition, he has bangers. So I think we gotta go back to the drawing board for Sam Patterson. I'd say give him, like, Oban Elliott. You know, Oban Elliott, he's also coming off a couple of losses, but at one point, he was looked at as a decent prospect because he was on like a 3-fight win streak. So I think both of these guys, they could put on a decently entertaining scrap. I think that Sam Patterson needs to fight obviously a little bit lower in the rankings, but still though, like, I do think that Sam Patterson, he can bounce back from this. MVP is a very uniquely weird style and also very boring. But either way though, Sam Patterson versus Oban Elliott, I think is a decent fight to make, and then the winner can get back on track to climb the rankings of the welterweight division. You know, I was very impressed with what Danny Silva was able to show. You know, normally I don't see Danny Silva really getting knockout KOs, but against Curtis Campbell, he was able to knock him out in the second round. So I think that Danny Silva deserves a sizable jump up in competition, and I think that sizable jump up is against Lucien Kita. Now, Lucien Kita, fair enough, he made his debut on this exact same card against Nathaniel Wood, and he did lose, but I don't think Lucien Kita's that bad, alright? It was a pretty competitive fight with Nathaniel Wood, and you actually have to be pretty good to beat Nathaniel Wood, so I don't think losing to Nathaniel Wood's the end of the world. But either way, though, Danny Silva versus Lucien Kita, this would be a pretty sick boxing match. I think that both guys would love to scrap, and I think that the winner of this fight can then go on to look for someone close to the rankings, maybe even a ranked opponent in Lucien Kita's case. But either way though, Danny Silva versus Lucien Kita is the next fight to make, and the winner of this fight can probably get close to the top 15 of the featherweight division. You know, it sucks for Curtis Campbell. I did think that he was going to beat Danny Silva, but in hindsight, Danny Silva is really good. and he actually improved because now he has one punch knockout power. But that being said, though, Curtis Campbell, I do think that he's young. He has a lot of potential. Let's give him a step back in competition against someone like Robert Ruchala. Now, most of you guys probably don't know who this guy is, all right? He's fought only once in the UFC against William Gomez. It was a pretty underwhelming fight, but he's still in the UFC, so we got to get him a fight. I think that him and Curtis Campbell can fight sometime in the Paris card, like 6 months later. I still think that Curtis Campbell's decent. I know that he didn't look the best against Danny Silva, but in hindsight, Danny Silva's a lot better than the guys that Curtis Campbell's been fighting on the regional scene. So I'm going to say that Curtis Campbell takes some time off, and then when he's ready to come back, he can bounce back against someone who's not as good as Danny Silva, and that someone, I believe, should be Robert Ruchala. I don't even know if Robert Ruchala is UFC caliber, so this would be interesting to see whether or not Curtis Campbell has what it takes to fight in the UFC. So yeah, let's have Curtis Campbell. Let's have him heal up for a bit, and then he can take on Robert Ruchala sometime on the Paris court or like any sort of fight night later this year. Christian Leroy Duncan beat Roman Dolidze. Fair enough, it was kind of an underwhelming performance, but still, he beat Roman Dolidze pretty convincingly. Christian Leroy Duncan, I think, should be getting a top 10 opponent who's a primary striker. I don't want to see him fight any grapplers anytime soon. Like, Roman Dolidze was getting takedowns easily on him, and if you're letting Roman Dolidze get takedowns on you easily, like, I don't think you're gonna last all that well. But fair enough, he's not gonna get any easy matchups. I think the UFC is gonna give him the most approachable matchup right now in Jared Cannonier, and also this would be a sick fight. You know, Cannonier, he's a top 10 middleweight right now. He is getting older, but a lot of middleweight prospects have tried to beat Cannonier, and they failed. Like, just ask RoboCop. So I think that CLD versus Cannonier would be a cool fight to make. Cannonier obviously is going to have to fight down after he lost the MVP. So yeah, let's have Christian Leroy Duncan versus Jared Cannonier. Let's give Cannonier a matchup that is somewhat approachable, but at the same time dangerous. And as for CLD, I want to see him fight someone who's a fun striker, not a serious grappler. Like, that's not what I really want to see. I think that CLD is going to get ragdolled in the first 2 rounds if he fights a decent grappler. So yeah, let's have CLD versus Jared Cannonier, and then the winner can climb back up into the top 10 of the middleweight division. We, including you watching this video, want to see the trilogy between Roman Dolidze and Marvin Vettori. Both of these guys, you know, haven't looked the best in their careers, and to be honest though, like, these guys are the epitome of mid. I mean, you can literally watch Roman Dolidze not do anything against CLD other than pull guard and clinch against the fence. But yeah, I want to see this fight. I think this would be funny for the memes. Both of these guys, let's be honest here, they shouldn't belong in the UFC at this point. But either way, though, Roman Dolidze versus Marvin Vettori, this would be an epic trilogy that everybody has been asking for. You know, we all asked for the rematch back in last year for Roman Dolidze versus Marvin Vettori, and now we are all asking for the trilogy in the Roman Coliseum for Roman Dolidze and Marvin Vettori. So yeah, UFC, book this fight, and this will be an epic showdown that of the likes that we've never seen before. I think Mason Jones deserved his crafty vet test. All right, he's been putting on bangers for us nonstop, and I think he's gonna be a real force to be reckoned with in the lightweight division. And I think that crafty vet test that he should take is against Carlos Diego Ferreira. Now, I understand that Carlos Diego Ferreira got knocked out in November of last year, I think. And I'm not sure that if Diego Ferreira can be ready by then. But either way, though, Carlos Diego Ferreira, he's a tricky opponent who has been able to fraud check a lot of prospects in the past. And I think that Mason Jones, he's been looking very solid right now. I want to see Mason Jones actually make a run in the lightweight division. He's in the prime of his career. I don't want to see him go through like meaningless wars. Like, don't get me wrong, it would be fun, but I actually do believe that Mason Jones has the skills to climb the rankings and potentially be like a top 15 level lightweight. But either way though, Mason Jones versus Carlos Diego Ferreira, based on the rankings as well as the timeline itself, I think this would be a good fight to make sometime later this year. I'd say like in August. I know CLD, he got knocked out, and he's not really the most active fighter of all time, but I do believe that Carlos Diego Ferreira, he has some pop in his shots, and he can grapple. So hopefully, I want to see Mason Jones be tested against a crafty veteran, and if he can get past the crafty veteran test, then we can start talking about giving him like top 25, top 30 matchups in the lightweight division. I think Nathaniel Wood should get a ranked opponent. Honestly, he should have been ranked a long time ago, but he's had some iffy, controversial decisions in the past. So I think the opponent we should give Nathaniel Wood is David Onama. Alright, it's a miracle as to how David Onama is still in the rankings in the year of 2026, but David Onama is still in the featherweight rankings in the year of 2026. So I would love to see Nathaniel Wood get his opportunity to climb the ranks, and I think the perfect opponent for him right now is David Onama. I don't fear for these guys getting knocked out in this fight, but this is going to be a very technical, high-level match and on the feet. Both of these guys love to strike. But I do think that Nathaniel Wood has what it takes to become a ranked contender in the featherweight division. So I want to see him get his opportunity against someone who I have questions about. Like, I don't think that David Onama is all that good. But if Nathaniel Wood can beat David Onama, then he'll legitimately become a ranked contender in the featherweight division. Iwo Barenewski is going to be a future superstar. Mark my words. I think that Iwo Barenewski is going to be good. That being said, though, he's beaten Austin Lane and Ibo Aslan. Not the best light heavyweights in the roster. I want to give him a slight step up in competition, and that slight step up is against Benson Ribeiro. Alright, now, many of you might think that Benson Ribeiro is a complete scrub, but he's not completely awful. Like, if you are completely awful, Benson Ribeiro will find the way to fraud check you. But either way, though, I think that Iwo Barenewski can get a highlight reel over Benson Ribeiro. You never know about these light heavyweights. You know, we all thought that Ming Yang Zhang was going to be the next superstar in the light heavyweight division, but then he got fraud checked by Johnny Walker. So yeah, I want to see Iwo Barenewski rack up a few more wins. I know this is low-key a can, but Benson Ribeiro's better than the cans that Iwo Barenewski's fought. Alright, this is a slight jump up in competition for him, and I think that this would be a quick round 1 KO in the process. So yeah, let's have Iwo Barenewski fight Benson Ribeiro. If Iwo Barenewski can get him out there in like, what, the first 3 minutes of the fight, then we start talking about giving him sizable jump ups, maybe even someone just outside of the rankings of the light heavyweight division. Now, Mario Pinto had an underwhelming fight against Felipe Franco. I thought that he was going to be able to finish Felipe Franco at some point in the fight, but he couldn't do that. So, fair enough. But yeah, I do believe that Mario Pinto should be looking for someone in the rankings still. Maybe not as somewhat high up as I initially planned. Like, had he finished Felipe Franco really easily, I would be saying, like, he should be getting a top 10 opponent. But because he didn't, he needs to fight someone outside of the top 10. And someone outside of the top 10, I think that would be a interesting matchup, is Shamil the Blob Gaziev. Alright, now Shamil the Blob Gaziev got destroyed by Waldo Cortez Acosta. And I do think that he's going to need some time off, but I do think that their schedules will match. Alright, it's been a couple of months since Waldo Cortez Acosta set Shamil Gaziev to the Shadow Realm. So, and I do think that Mario Pinto still deserves a ranked level contender. So, let's have Mario Pinto fight Shamil Gaziev maybe on the Abu Dhabi card a couple of months from now. I think the winner of this fight can look back into the climbing to the top 10 of the rankings. But yeah, either way though, Mario Pinto, he had an underwhelming fight. So, I'm going to have to drop him a little bit. Like, I initially thought that he was going to fight someone like a Derek Lewis, someone in the top 10. But my expectations weren't met in that last fight, so let's have him fight someone just outside of the top 10. And if he can beat Shamil Gaziev pretty convincingly, then we give him a top 10 opponent in the heavyweight division. Brando Pereicic destroyed Louis Sutherland. I will say though, Brando Pereicic, he's fought nothing but schmucks. So let's give him the next step up, right? Someone who is still a schmuck, but he's not as bad as the schmucks that he's been fighting. And I think that someone is Janata Diniz. Janata Diniz actually has some KO power. And if you fight him in a pure kickboxing match, he is pretty difficult to beat. He is coming off that loss to Mario Pinto where he got absolutely destroyed. But I do think that their schedules will line up. Pereicic barely took any damage in this fight. And Dolidze, although he took a lot of damage against Mario Pinto, that was like a couple of months ago. So I think that Brando Pereicic versus Dolidze is the next fight to make. And if Brando Pereicic can knock out Dolidze in the first round, then I think it's time to start talking about the rankings in the heavyweight division. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. But otherwise, leave any comments down below how you guys feel about UFC London overall, as well as the matchups that are going to be following soon. But yeah, outside of that, leave any comments down below for other videos you guys want me to make. And outside of that, I will see you guys next time. Peace.